Meeting of Transit and Bus Committee will be called to order. Please find your seats. Mr. Marino, are there any members of the public who have registered and wish to speak?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. We have 4 public speakers this morning. I would like to remind them all to please limit their remarks to 2 minutes. The first speaker is Omar Vera, and Mr. Vera will be followed by Murray Bowden.
Thank you. Good morning, MTA Board's Transit Committee. Welcome back to another edition of your meeting. Day after President's Day. First post-President's Day I'm talking about here. First of all, I must thank President Byford for sending me this letter. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll give you my address later. Second, I also like to thank him for making this new design. This looks so cool for the Transit Bus Committee, and I hope other committees will follow suit. All right. But third, there's something I need to discuss that's a little concerning, though. Last Friday, I was late to a job interview at Bloomingdale's in Soho. As a result, I had to reschedule the appointment because the delay was the Q train had a signal issue in Brooklyn that apparently impacted the entire line, even up to the 2nd Avenue corridor, which I was previously, as I need to print out extra copies of my resume at my alma mater, Hunter College. But like I said, with new leadership, we can turn this around. There is generally like delays have to go, but the quality of subway service has to go. Now, one more thing. I was going to mention this in the finance, but I'll mention this now. I think it's time the transit considers having entry-only, exit-only turnstiles because it is a pain for customers that want to enter, want to exit, but they can't as there's lines of people entering one direction or exiting another direction. I think it's time we ought to adopt an entry-only, exit-only turnstiles. I'm sure Andrew here would agree. But with that said, thank you for having me here, and see you around.
Thank you, Mr. Vera. The next speaker is Murray Bowden, and Mr. Bowden will be followed by Kevin Zhang. Mr. Bowden.
Good morning. Last week I spoke at the New Jersey Transit meeting and at the Port Authority meetings, and the feeling that I come away with is there is a new spirit of cooperation between all areas of transportation in this area. There is rebranding going on to indicate that this is functioning as a region, that the competition between New York and New Jersey in the area of transportation, in my opinion, is over. They're rebranding Stewart Air Force Base Airport to reflect that it's part of the metropolitan area. And everything that I come away with is the feeling that the cooperation in transportation in this area is something I've never seen before. And it's what's necessary to move this area forward economically and competing with other areas of the country. So I want you all to be aware of the change in attitudes in this area and the unification that did not exist before. And that's to be congratulated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. The next speaker is Kevin Zhang, and Mr. Zhang will be followed by Matt Chabin.
Hello, good morning to Franco Ferrer and Andy Byford. My name is Kevin Zhang. I would like to request to bring back the B23 bus along 16th Avenue and Cotorio Road and extend along Beverly Road, Brooklyn Avenue, and Linden Boulevard, because B23 bus terminate at Flatbush Avenue and Cotorio Road, waiting for the B23 bus every 20 to 30 minutes. B23 bus was discontinued due to low ridership in June 2010 service cuts. Now I can walk Transfer Street from 62nd Street and Union Trade Avenue on the DNN train station to Cotorio Road on the Q train station due to the cold weather. I can't walk from Flatbush Avenue and Kotori Road to Beverly Road on the 205 train station due to the cold weather. B23 bus will be restored along 16th Avenue and Kotori Road between Dow Hill Road and Flatbush Avenue and extend along Beverly Road between Flatbush Avenue and Brooklyn Avenue, Brooklyn Avenue between Beverly Road and Linden Boulevard, and Linden Boulevard between Brooklyn Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue in both directions, and terminate at Van Zicklin Avenue and Stanley Avenue on weekdays and weekends. If the B23 bus restored, so I could take the B23 bus from 62nd Street and Union Street Avenue station to Kotori Road station to go home, so I don't want to get sick and catch a cold. Approximately 1,580 weekdays customers and 1,240 weekends customers will be required to use the B8 or B16 bus. A typical customer's trip would increase by 15 minutes, but that's why the B23 bus got a low ridership because I can't walk in the cold weather along 16th Avenue, and when I got sick, the B23 bus was never restored. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. The next speaker is Matt Chabin.
Morning. Thank you, Chair Ferrer and members of the Transit Committee. My name is Matt Chabin. I'm the Policy Director at the Center for an Urban Future. At last month's meeting, the new Transit Chief, Andy Byford, expressed interest in a bus action plan commensurate with the efforts being made to revitalize the subways. A week later, my organization released a report we believe illustrates just how deeply and desperately both are needed. Entitled An Unhealthy Commute, the report highlights how healthcare workers, who make up the city's largest industry, have the worst transit commutes of any private sector. Among the 500,000 workers are plenty of doctors walking or driving to work, yet the vast majority are nurses, medical technicians, administrators, and home health aides. Most earn low to moderate wages, and like so many other working New Yorkers, they are increasingly moving to neighborhoods along the periphery of the city in search of affordable rents. But this at the same time means grueling commutes of multiple buses and subway transfers just to get to work. Compounding the issue is that fully 2/3 of all healthcare jobs are located outside Manhattan, a trend that is reshaping the city's economy and challenging the radial design of the transit network. The result is that the subways are far from the only thing causing pain for New York commuters. The lack of efficient, reliable service within and among the boroughs outside Manhattan is a transit crisis all its own. Already, this committee has shown a willingness to innovate in these areas, whether through select bus service or the proposed Freedom Ticket to reduce commuter train fares within the boroughs. We urge you to be bolder still. Developing and implementing a bus rescue plan that applies best practices from our report and the great work of the Bus Turnaround Commission will be key. Better bus service is a goal within reach and at a cost well below that of what it will take to restore the subways. In addition, commendable efforts to redesign decades-old routes on Staten Island should be celebrated. They should also be expanded. Cities like Houston and Baltimore have already made such efforts. There's no reason New York can't get away from its old trolley car routes. Another simple step forward that could prove particularly effective is a healthcare working group between the MTA and the DOT, employers and unions. We think this could be the first of a working group of this kind that doesn't just look at transit data. Just in closing, I want to say this affects millions of New Yorkers, not just the healthcare industry. We really believe that it goes beyond their issues. They're simply emblematic. And I have a stack of reports here for anyone who needs some table-side reading at night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chabin. That was the last public speaker.
Thank you very much and good morning. The minutes for the January Transit and Bus Committee meeting are included in the committee book. May I have a motion to approve? Second? Are there any changes or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the minutes? Opposed? Abstaining? The minutes are adopted. Now I'd like to ask President Byford to make his report.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. President. Well, hopefully you like the new look of the book. One of the speakers already alluded to that. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to read out what's already written in here, because you can all read. And I've asked my VPs, SVPs, to do the same. They're not going to read out what's written in the book. They will summarize the key points, because I think that's a more sort of professional and business way of doing things. And I've also asked my team to focus less on just working out percentages and statistics, I mean, all important though sometimes that is, more to analyze what's that data telling us, and critically, what are we doing about it? So where anything is adverse to target, so below target or adverse on trend, then we should be saying to you, this is what we're doing about it for each and every item. So I see this very much as a work in progress. We've tried to streamline the book, make it more informative for you, so that then prompts your questions, and obviously your role then is to hold us to account. And I've said to my guys, we need to be across the detail such that we can answer any question that you might put our way. So very much focused on corrective actions in what's for me been a very busy first 4 weeks, coming up to speed with the big issues. I've spent a lot of time, I've met various council members, I've been to various town halls, particularly to do with the upcoming L line closure, along with Commissioner Trottenberg. I've spent time reaching out to advocacy groups, to our unions, various meetings set up with that. And as was mentioned by one of the speakers, getting together the beginnings of a bus strategy that I'll ask Darryl to talk about when it comes to his part. What I would say is it's evident to me after just 4 weeks, no surprise to anyone in the room, and today is kind of typical of this. Performance is nowhere near good enough. We're still struggling with far too many interruptions to service on the subway in particular, and just today we've got these problems that have plagued the NR and the W lines at 59th and 5th Street, which, Frank, I believe imminently should be fixed. But that has wrecked people's morning's commute, so obviously we're not too happy about that. And we're now looking into what actually happened there, which led to us ending up with blank signals and trains having to trip by. Other things we're working on, lots of work going on Stations Capital, the Capital Programme. I will come on to that. I was very pleased to go to a Medals of Honor ceremony which really and rightfully acknowledged the fabulous work that many people at this organisation do day in and day out. And I've certainly been impressed on my travels around the system so far with the commitment and the passion of people on this system who really do want us to turn it around. They're committed to that, and I think it's something that I can certainly tap into with my team as we put together the strategic plan that will inform and guide our renaissance as a transit organisation. And on that point, one piece of work that we're well advanced on, particularly under Tim's leadership and a team that we've put together, we are reviewing the organisation of New York City Transit to deliver a more streamlined, less bureaucratic, more a fleet of foot organisation that will enable us to achieve still more progress. So I'll keep you posted on that. We're having a comprehensive review, pretty much from a blank sheet of paper, but designing an organisation that puts the customer at the centre of everything we do, and that aims to get better, exponentially better at every aspect of our business. One sad note, or happy for her, I guess, Cheryl, is Cheryl, our System Safety Vice President. Cheryl's last meeting today, after a wonderful career at the transit, over 35 years ago. Cheryl started as a safety specialist and worked her way up from the bottom, good for you, to the ranks of Vice President, and you've been Department Head for the past 17 years. And really instrumental in developing that department from a small group focused only on subway customers to now the comprehensive group that it is, overlooking the whole of the safety risk profile and all of the safety aspects of what we do. So, Mr. Chairman, I think I speak for the whole committee in thanking Cheryl for a fabulous career. You really deserve your retirement. Stay well. It's only been a 5-week crossover for us, but Cheryl, you go with our very best wishes for a long and very happy and very healthy retirement. Congratulations. Oh, I'm sorry. So a couple of other things. Apologies if you couldn't really hear me. Hopefully that's better. I will. Something else that I feel that is good practice in a meeting is also to update you on any outstanding actions. So we, in addition to changing the look of the pack, we're also aiming progressively to feed back anything that you asked us about. If we haven't done it in between meetings, we should be feeding it back. So just a few comments on that before I talk about stations programme. We owe the committee an update on progress implementing improvements to local bus service. So we're planning a presentation on that in April. We haven't forgotten about it. And that is very timely because it's about concurrent with the time frame of the spring that I've asked Darryl to put together the bus strategy that I alluded to just now. So that's coming together, and that will be a comprehensive piece of work. And before I arrived, the team before my arrival had already committed to a breakdown of right-of-way delays. So we're reviewing that, and I spoke to a couple of board members in the recess while we were waiting to come in. I'm reviewing how we categorise delays, including, and this came up at the last meeting, those delays that are lumped under that rather big, slightly well, not particularly meaningful pot of overcrowding. So I want to see us really break that down. And as I was saying to Commissioner Weisbrod next door, it's important, if we're to truly improve the service that we offer, you have to get to the underlying root cause. So therefore, I don't want to just see overcrowding. I want to see what caused that overcrowding. You know, what was the absolute underlying root cause? So we're dissecting all of that. We're re-looking at how we categorise delays. We're re-looking at categories like, for example, signal failure. Sometimes a misnomer, the signal hasn't failed, it's done its job in presenting a red aspect, but what caused it to fail in the first place? That's what we really should be getting to. So again, we'll be updating that information and we'll be providing you with that breakdown. You asked us about station and train evacuations, and you'll find that within your report, and I'm grateful to Frank for putting that together. That's contained within the pack. You may have some questions about that. And similarly, you asked us as a previous committee before my arrival about issues relating to the Transit Adjudication Bureau, the TAB, and violations. So we will be sending out a memo with that information and recommendations in the next few weeks, and we look forward to discussing that with you further and answering any questions that you may have. We're also looking at fare evasion information, again, per your request, and that again will be reported back upon. And you asked about ESI, Enhanced Station Initiative Selection Criteria, and you should have received a white paper from us in a memo distributed over the weekend. So we've tried to make sure that we've gone through the minutes to capture every single outstanding item. In future meetings, again, we'll keep you updated so that nothing goes unanswered. And, you know, you rightly hold us to account in public session, and we should report back similarly. Before we move on to what you'll notice in the book is now called a customer service report, because that's what it's all about. It is about customer service. So I've asked my team to focus on customer service within their reports. I would just like to provide you with some highlights on the progress that we're making on our station's capital programme. So that should come up on the screen momentarily. If we can just get it up, thank you. And this will be repeated at the board, but in slightly different format. This is to give you a comprehensive overview of what the station's capital programme is all about. And if you remember, partly the context was the discussions that we've had about ESI. But in asking me to review the programme, Chair Lothar asked me to have a look at the ESI package specifically. It's been informative for me to look at the whole stations programme so that I better understand the context for ESI and actually the breadth of what we're doing. So I'll go through this reasonably quickly. So that's the agenda. We're looking, I want to just brief you and people here present on the whole scope of what we're doing, which is a very impressive package of works, I have to say. And that's what it's made up of. You can see there in the pie chart that you've got the various constituent parts, adding up to a $16 billion capital program over the capital program in question, namely 2015 to 2019. And this aims to address the condition, the underlying condition and the modernisation of our entire stock of stations, 472 stations, the average age of which is 95 years. So these are old stations. It's a big task, huge number of components, 913 platforms, 1,100 mezzanines. So as you'll be aware, that requires constant upkeep and constant maintenance. It's a constant cycle of renovation. There's the map. That's, and it's a source of pride to us all at the TA that we have the most stations of any system in the world, 493 including Staten Island. And there's a lot of work going on. Of those 493, we currently have planned a work either planned or ongoing at 258 of those stations. So it's a huge task, but there's a huge amount of effort being put into that. And that map shows you where that work is going on, and it shows the geographical spread of that work. So it's pretty much throughout the network, and it includes all aspects of work, capital program, component renewal, ADA work, ESI, elevator and escalator renewal, multiple types of work, but we've only counted stations once, okay? So where there's multiple types of work going on, we're only counting them once. So that makes that 258. That's even more informative, I think, and revealing about how big the scale of this work is and the geographical spread of it. There's $4 billion, as I've said, in the capital program for 2015 and 2019, and you can see there how that breaks down. And I'm pleased to see $950 million for station accessibility programs, one of the elements that I've said is one of my 4 priorities in coming here. But a lot of it is also state of good repair work, repairing the underlying fabric of stations that after 95 years in some cases are beginning to really show their age. And it targets those areas that really do need to be kept in state of good repair, safety critical items such as platform edge, handrails, lighting, structural elements, the types of things that you definitely cannot allow to get into a state of disrepair. And whenever we undertake work, we always make sure that affected components are in compliance with ADA, and that program includes full station renewal at 15 stations. That's how it breaks down. The underlying items within these. You see there various packages, including elevators and escalators, $400 million. So we've got a couple of pictures for you here to just illustrate the scale of the work. I was down here just a few weeks ago doing my track training, so I took a little trip out to the Sea Beach line, the N line, to have a look at a fundamental rebuild. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than this. This is the southbound platform on the N line, on the Sea Beach line. We've already completely rebuilt the northbound stations, and this, as you can see there, that's a picture of the southbound. And these are fundamental rebuilds. We're going right back to the base. These stations were completely beyond their useful life. So we're completely rebuilding them, rebuilding stairs, lighting, rehabbing control areas, and this includes accessibility at 3 stations on the N line, plus a connecting station on the West End or D line. Another picture here. You can't call that cosmetic. These stations are in a pretty dreadful state, actually, and I asked John, my SVP for CapEx, were we also doing the station houses because they're looking extremely tatty and tired, and yes, indeed we are. You can see there the impact of decades of water ingress on that station, that one being Avenue U, and that actually was the station where I asked you, John, about the station entrance. New tactile edges going in, new lighting, a complete rebuild to get these stations back into good repair for decades to come. Yes, sir.
A quick question. On the rebuilding of the Sea Beach line, when we saw these conditions, I don't know how many years ago, some of this was caused by third-party water egress from houses up on hills and such. Have we taken care of that problem?
I'll ask John to comment on that, please.
It's a very involved situation, but yes, we're looking to address the water issue that caused the general deterioration of those stations.
It would be ridiculous if we didn't take care of the problem and rebuilt this and then we had the same problem.
Agreed. Understood.
Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't, that will be part of the work that's part of this
Yes.
endeavor? Thank you.
Okay, carrying on in similar vein, this is the Myrtle line, the M line. You can see there the before and after shot, before on the left, where we've been repairing the mezzanine underside. And our work here included the control house, street and platform stairs, windscreens, lighting, structural and painting work. And this work's particularly timely because of the additional load that the M line will take once the Canarsie tube shuts down in the spring of next year. So we've got to get these stations ready, and that includes... Sorry. On the next picture, we've been decluttering the mezzanines, replacing the floors, upgrading the lighting and the control systems, so really decluttering, and again that will help us, it'll be invaluable in fact when these stations carry a much greater load while Canarsie is shut. So that was station renewal. Component work, equally important. You can see here this City Hall. This is typical of station component work at the top. You've got there what, you know, even to the untrained eye is a pretty poor state of good repair, in that water has really badly infiltrated into that brickwork. So that's not something that you can ignore. That's something that has to be addressed, and it truly has been addressed. We've repaired the platform edges and the wall finishes. This is at the City Hall station on the R&W lines. And while we're at it, as I said earlier, we also address ADA components such as new tactile platform edges. And the finished product looks really good. It's watertight, and that will see us well into the future. In similar vein, this is 104th Street on the Jamaica line, the J&Z. Another example of component work. You know, I mean, you might just say, well, you've just tarted up the entrance, but it's way more than that. The stairs were beyond their useful life. They've been completely, was that an English expression? Sorry, that the stairs have been completely rebuilt, and a new canopy's been put on, new lighting's been put on, and again new handrails and stairs. So that is another good example of fundamental component work. I mentioned ADA a few times. ADA, obviously, the headline issue that everyone looks for is elevators, but it's way more than that. There's a whole bunch of other features that need to be got right, and we're progressively fitting these features to all of our stations, and we certainly undertake this kind of work whenever we touch a station. So this includes entrances and stairs, so entrance doors made automatic, handrails, treads and risers given the appropriate treatment, and you can see there the tactile strip along the platform edge on the top photo. On the second photo, the braille and the extruding typeface on the signage, so that's again compliant with ADA. Fare control areas get treatment. We have warning strips and ADA boarding areas all get marked out. So again, you know, when we go into a station, these are the kinds of work that we're doing. Equally paying attention to customer information. I've already talked about braille, but PA systems with audio and video features and fitting of help points. And you'll be aware, board members, that these enhancements are legally required if we're doing certain types of capital work at a station. So on to ESI. And again, we circulated the background of the white paper so that you were reminded of the history of this program. The ESI does include a significant amount of component work, including, as I've already mentioned, progressive ADA. And so how were the stations selected? Well, they were informed by the station condition survey that we undertook back in 2012. And so the stations that we included for the ESI program were those that were planned to receive state of good repair investment in the 2015-19 program, but also with an eye to geographic diversity. So we didn't want them all clustered in the same place. And with that station condition survey, the average ESI station had 40% of its structural components rated not in a good state of good repair, whereas the average for the system is 28%. So these stations needed state of good repair work. Key elements included within the ESI package: lighting, platform edge improvements, increased capacity in the fare control areas, cameras and structural repairs. And again, I'll talk some more about this at the board meeting on Thursday, not least because the vote for the two outstanding ESI packages will be forthcoming at that meeting. One of the points that I'm often asked about, and which, I'll be frank, was initially, before I understood this program, puzzled me, was why ADA elevators were not included. And there are three primary reasons. Many ESI stations are adjacent to accessible stations, so there is one pretty much next door or in very close proximity to accessible stations. 3 stations already had elevators, those at 34th Street and 8th Avenue, 34th Street and 7th Avenue, and Hunts Point Avenue. And adding elevators would have pretty much doubled the cost of ESI. So I guess what I've learned from this in-depth study that I've done of this program, of the whole program, is you do need to look at the whole program. Because initially I was perplexed as to why elevators wouldn't be included, but I now understand that they are via different means, via different programs. And in any case, these ESI packages contained a lot of state of good repair work that could not be ignored any longer. So an example of that, again, just looking at it, you'd say, well, what have we done there? Well, we've rehabilitated the street entrance. You see the new fencing's gone up, new stair treads, new risers, the tiling's been fixed. While we're at it, absolutely getting better customer information, because we should be enhancing things for our riders. Similarly, Prospect Avenue, 4th Avenue line on the R. It's more than a new control area, but that looks great. The floor's been done. The lights have received attention. We've undertaken work behind the scenes that if you just visited the location, you wouldn't know. And it may not be easy to see above the illuminated control area, but you can also see there we've installed cameras. There's a couple of cameras that are hung down on the 2 balls hanging from the ceiling. Another area, city-sponsored station projects. This has a budget of $300 million. This is where we've been working with the city to come up with station projects which are of the city's choosing. And as you can see from the notes on the board, these are intended also to enhance station access, to alleviate crowding, and to support key city policies such as the economic development and housing strategies. We've chosen to make up the $300 million budget, we've chosen 5 stations working with the city tentatively in January to advance into design, and we will now work to complete and confirm that list once we've done further design and cost estimates. But we anticipate that several more stations will be made accessible through this program, and we've tentatively selected Broadway Junction on the A and C, 170 Street Jerome on the 4 line, Livonia Avenue on the L, Flushing Main Street 7 line, which is already accessible, and Queensborough Plaza NW and 7 lines. On ADA, that gives you a map of where we're either we have current projects undergoing, which are the green blobs, and then the pink show in progress. And although we still have a ways to go, there's 143 stations are accessible, which is more than any other system in North America. So absolutely, we want to push on with that program. But I think that's a fact often forgotten, that that is the most of any North American transit system, and that serves 48% of our riders. And we certainly intend to push on with that. The stations in progress include the remaining 13 key stations. You'll recall there were 100 key stations. We've done 87, so there's 13 more to go, and 12 additional stations. What else have we got here? On that same theme, and I touched upon this, we do intend to go further. I mean, 48% is okay, but it's nowhere near good enough. And consistent with my declaration that I wanted this to be one of my 4 key areas, we do now intend to evaluate the remaining stations. So we have we've got a consultant that we're going to use. He's the person or the company that does our station condition survey every 5 years. We are going to commission that company to evaluate the cost and the practicability of making every remaining station accessible. So that's 150 stations. So the goal of that survey will be to understand the cost and complexity of making those locations accessible. And that can then inform future capital programs and give us an insight into how much that's going to cost and what the scale of the challenge is. It also includes improving connectivity within the system by investing in transfer stations and in reducing gaps between accessible stations. So the next steps on this are to engage with the board work group on accessibility and to work with the city on zoning policy to leverage private investment, which I think is a golden opportunity where people want to develop things. That's great. But while they're at it, they can make a contribution. So stations that are promising candidates for 2024 will be evaluated first, and then we'll progressively create a database to be updated continually as station work is performed. We can't make a commitment about investment pace at the moment, but I would suggest that maintaining the existing investment level of $1 billion over each capital programme is the likely minimum. So just to reiterate then, that these are the next steps. We will be working with the board, the board work group on accessibility. We will continue to identify state of good repair needs. We will continue to work with the disability community to enhance investment with ADA. I'm pleased to see that under Ira's leadership, leading the work group, which had its first meeting earlier this month, there's already a lot of appetite for pushing on with this survey and for progressively making the remainder of the system, or evaluating what the cost will be of making the remainder of the system accessible. That's it. I will now throw to questions. Thank you.
Questions? Mr. Weisbrod, Commissioner Trottenberg.
Well, I have a few questions just about the data. First of all, Mr. Byford, thank you very, very much for your starting efforts on providing a much more user-friendly and I think meaningful, more meaningful material to the board. And I think I really appreciate it, and I'm sure others do as well. And also your desire to get to the heart of why there are delays and what's really causing them. I have a question about, I've asked this question for the last several months, that we have a subway action plan that intuitively we believe is going to make a material difference. And we point to the reduction in major delays, 50 trains or more, as a indication that it is making a reasonable, a meaningful difference. But with respect to all other data, including legacy data and new data, essentially the needle hasn't moved at all. And so I guess my question to you, especially now that you're taking a fresh look at all of this and bringing your experience and new eyes to look at this, does the subway action plan itself need tweaking, given the fact that we're now roughly 7 months into it, and in terms of the output, there doesn't seem to be yet any change?
I believe we're doing the right things. I think to a certain extent there was always going to be a lag between undertaking this work, a lot of which is unseen, and seeing the improvement in performance. And the major incidents category is a good proxy for customers' experience, but it's not perfect by any means, and it will tend to fluctuate a bit. But without question, fixing continuous welded rail or installing continuous welded rail, fixing the root causes of signal problems, of track problems, of drainage problems, of train door problems, absolutely will come good. I had that, as I've previously said, had this plan not been here when I got here, I would have instituted such a plan, because the critical thing about improving service on any transit system is understanding the underlying root cause of what is causing delay, and not satisfying yourself with a big lump like overcrowding, for example, but understanding what is it that's either making your system unreliable or what is impeding progress. So on capacity, for example, there's no question we have to bite the bullet and re-signal our lines, our subway lines. And the good news is we have Canarsie, we're doing Flushing. We must bite the bullet and re-signal the rest of the lines. Why? Because with a modern signalling system, there's way fewer moving parts to go wrong, because you don't have these legacy line-side old-fashioned, but time-honoured, but old-fashioned, now obsolete items such as train stops and tripcocks and insulated block joints. You have a fundamentally more reliable system, and you can add huge amounts of capacity because you can move trains safely closer together with moving block signalling. So we have to do that. So I do think we're doing the right things with the SAP. I just think we need to redouble our efforts, and some of it's not just improving physical equipment. I've been speaking with Frank, my SVP for Subway, about where we have people to make sure that we have them in the right places. For example, the platform controllers. I see them every day at Grand Central. I stop and commend them. They do a great job. I want to see if we can, within existing forces, have more of that kind of thing. Where we have the rapid response teams, let's have more of that kind of thing. Again, not asking for extra money, redoing what we've got within the existing headcount, and also looking at the systems we use. But I don't want to see what I call own goals, where we inflict a problem on our customers by errors. We've got to cut those things out. There's too many failures on a Monday morning, or in this case on a Tuesday morning, after work has been undertaken. So you can expect in my tenure a relentless pursuit of basics and a relentless drilling down of root cause. It will come good.
Well, I want to add my voice to Carl's and thank President Byford. I think it's very refreshing to have a presentation that is clear and focused on the things the board's actually wanting to hear about. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And it sounds like you have a lot of great ideas. I just had a question going back to your presentation, which can we all get a copy of that?
We will get that circulated.
And then you mentioned, and maybe this is a public document. I've never seen it though. The 2012 Station Conditions Report. Is that a public document?
Is that, guys,
I couldn't find it on the website, and I don't remember.
I doubt it is. It's kind of dry, and it's more of an input document. But John, could you help me out there?
Yeah, no, it's not a public document. It's a dynamic document that we constantly are updating.
So I guess for us, understanding that how all these stations were done and how everything was picked hinges off that document, it's just hard for us to evaluate it without the underlying document. So I really would like to get our hands on it, I guess. Understanding, maybe we won't get every piece of it, but, not to be difficult, but it's great to hear you say you had this document to help inform all these different chains of work, but I'd love to see the document. And it gets to sort of my next question, Andy, which is, I think it is a phenomenal idea to step back and say, how much would it cost to make the entire system accessible and get an honest rendering of what the cost is? But I guess it sort of begs the bigger question, which is, how much would it cost to get the entire system in the state of good repair? Because I think when we look at the big number, then won't that, part of what we're having disputes about here is it's not that we don't think everything should be fixed. It's just that there isn't money to fix everything at once. So we're not fighting about that stations with 40% shouldn't, state of good repair issue shouldn't be fixed. It's more like, yeah, but are we leaving behind the ones that are 75%? If we had that clear, here's all the stations, here's what it would cost to get each of them into a state of good repair and fully accessible, and here's whatever metric you all are using. I use this metric now we have a lot of PedRamp work we're doing in the city where we look both at sort of level of state of good repair and sort of importance of the area, high pedestrian area, high area for people with disabilities, etc. I just think that would help us all have a really fruitful discussion here instead of sort of the going around. I don't know whether some version of that could be pulled together by Thursday, but it would really, I think it would really be illuminating for everybody and help us all as we are, won't be entitled to our own set of facts. We'll all hopefully have the same facts.
Well, Commissioner, let me take that away and talk to my team about it. Certainly, I think ultimately we have to think bold and we have to have a vision for what could be done, and what would that cost. In other words, to really get this this system completely rebuilt to a decently modern standard. And before I joined New York City Transit, I was lucky enough to go to Tokyo back in September, and different world. It's just spectacular what's happened there. And I've been to Beijing a couple of times, and it's remarkable the difference there from what was a very sort of dusty old, very limited subway system to now a completely state-of-the-art subway system. And New York's a world city. I'd love to think that over time we can give this city the subway service, in terms of the underlying state of it, that it deserves. But we'll take it away. We'll have a look and see if we could come up with even just a ballpark figure for what the comprehensive rebuild would be to completely re-equip trains, signals, and track and stations. And that's just looking at the subway, not ignoring buses and paratrans.
Mr. Weisbrot?
Yeah, can I just add to what Commissioner Trottenberg said? I think what you're doing today, and I think what we all appreciate, is that you're bringing to the board the important issues that the board should be looking at, and not getting mired in a dull recital of data, which we should all be able to do on our own. And that really is, I think, such an important step forward. And to me, what the board really at its ultimate should be doing, and this committee should be doing, is advising and ultimately probably deciding what the right allocation is among all of these challenges that we face, recognizing that we can't do everything. And Commissioner Trottenberg talked about what's the right allocation among stations, and I think that is one question. It's also a question of to what extent, knowing that we face so many challenges, are we allocating resources to stations as opposed to, as you mentioned, signals, which, I mean, just to know how much it would cost to bring a modern signal system into our subways, and knowing that this is a multi-year project that we perhaps should be accelerating in some way and sacrificing some other things. I don't think we can ever say we can't do any stations because we can only do signalization, but what the weight is and what, broadly speaking, our limited resources should go for, I really think is the ultimate decision and responsibility of this board, and I really do look forward to you advising us on that.
Well, that's my job, Commissioner, and you can hold me to account for that. The way I always try to see things, I have this thing about think like a customer, look at decision making through the lens of the customer, and I've stressed that to my team. That's going to be the way we do things going forward. So the way I look at it is, but ultimately you have to see everything in the round. That on the one hand, I passionately believe most people would rather wait in sort of less than beautiful surroundings as long as they get the train. I mean, that's the important thing you want to get from A to B. And if the station looks great, then great. But equally, though, having said that, it's a bit of a Pyrrhic victory if there's a perfect train service, but you can't get into your station because it's been closed on safety grounds because it's fallen into a state of good repair. State of disrepair. So you do have to do both. I mean, at the end of the day, getting from A to B safely and quickly and reliably is the job one for us to provide. But equally, we can't be having stations fall apart, and that's why I took some comfort from doing the research that I did, and I'm grateful to my team, particularly my Chief of Staff, for putting that presentation together. I was comforted by the fact that state of good repair does constitute, based on data, that station condition survey does constitute one of the main decision-making criteria.
Mr. Allen.
The station condition survey that has been referred to by Mr. O'Grady and yourself, are they looked at on one given day or on a series of days, and how frequently?
The last was done in 2012, I believe. John, would you like to just comment on the methodology, please?
I can get greater detail. It's not just one day, and it's not just in one season, but and I think that's probably one of the things that you're suggesting. But it is a comprehensive assessment of the station over a couple of different time periods. But it isn't done. It's just the 2012 survey was the roll-up of all of that effort leading to that. I don't know. Did I?
Okay, so having done the last one of these in 2012 and knowing that some stations were acted upon between that year and this year, do they now all get revisited before you go forward with final plans for these stations? Or did they get revisited?
I'm actually not the right person to ask that, but I will get that answer.
Thank you.
Robert can add to that. It's a 10-year needs assessment process. There's literally thousands of components that make up a station, so different components are evaluated at each station, and it takes years to accomplish that work, and then it's rolled up into a complete report. But Robert?
We're now engaging in our third station condition survey. It's done by a comprehensive team of it's about 18 different teams that are out there looking at all stations. What's remarkable about the process is it's done in a very timely way. So over about a 12-month period, all of the stations are looked at, and we've gotten better and better at the methodology in which we dissect the elements of a station and prioritize those elements in the review process. It is not a report, it's a database. It's a living database that we work off of in terms of planning the station projects, as well as we incrementally, the design teams go out as part of a project that's referred, they further update that database. So the survey is underway now. It is just being completed now, and it takes a good 3 to 6 months to dive in and do all of the correlations against previous data. The strength of the data is the continuity of the data and the continuous update of the same data.
I just wanted to follow up on Polly's and Carl's comments. I think first I appreciate the presentation and your approach, like everyone else, and I think sending us that slideshow would be helpful as well. You have, as you noted, a monumental task ahead of you just to stabilize the current system. And with the subway action plan, just going through this implementation and still having the challenges we have, what I would just be concerned about is diluting that focus of you and your team in this initial phase to think big picture. I think, my personal recommendation, as you take this into consideration, is just make sure you got the basics functioning and then develop a longer-term plan to say, for us to have a 21st century world-class transit system, including signals, including stations, including accessibility, what's that process and what's that timeline? And I wouldn't rush it because throwing out a number that is a not well-researched number, maybe not creatively thought of, sometimes becomes a big challenge to overcome, particularly in this city. I've seen a lot of projects die when someone threw out a number before they really knew what that number was, and we've had a lot of this discussion in our working group on construction costs, that one of the challenges is that first number gets set in stone, and then everyone turns to that and says, well, you see, it was more or less or not achievable. So I just caution you, be aspirational, but I think be thoughtful about let's getting the basics working first.
Commissioner, I think that's good advice. I mean, the only thing I was, in response to the Commissioner, your colleague's earlier question was, if we have such a figure, we could dust it off. But I absolutely take the point that, the first thing, the job one is, and I fully agree with this, is to stabilize the existing system first. That, again, was one of my 4 priorities on my first day here. But over time, we do want to be aspirational. I think we should think big, and we should think what could be done, and how much will that be. But you offer very good advice, and we'll take that.
Yeah. Okay. I guess my issue again is raised by Commissioner Trottenberg. We have a 2012 document, or not a document, just a database. I'd like the opportunity to start to see that, to delve into that. Again, you have to summarize it for us. I don't want, you give me I'm not good at manipulating databases. That's your work. But having some approximation of how each of these station rates would be invaluable, I think, in our determinations.
Mr. Blyford, I hate to cast something of a pall over what has been a very constructive conversation, and the pall being cost, money. How do you do it? Seems to me that one of the things we ought to think about is as you renovate, rebuild, do what you have to do on the subway system, you are doing something that is quite similar to building a new subway line. You're making it work. And it seems to me we have to think about value capture in that context. Seems to me that we have to find a way of financing it. It is something that value capture, the Commissioner Weisbrod has spoken to in terms of Metro North and other areas. And it seems to me we ought to think about it in this context as well. So that what I would ask you to do is, in your review, give some thought to how we can finance all of this. It isn't going to come from above. It's got to come from where the activity is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Point well made and well taken.
There are no other questions or comments. I'll ask Mr. Jazicki to make the subway part of the customer service report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My full written report can be found in your board materials on page number 23. A few highlights that you'll find: the Department of Subways continue to show signs of stabilization during the month of December. Weekday major incidents totaled 50. Details are on chart number 1. Overall, the new customer-focused performance measures were relatively stable, but certainly impacted by the December 11th bombing incident at 42nd and 8th. Details are on charts number 3 through 10. With regard to the fleet performance, the fleet continued an improving trend in 2017. I do need to point out a typo in the board materials that is on chart number 11 with respect to the R188 car class. The 2016 12-month mean distance between failure was inadvertently transposed between the new cars versus the conversion cars. The new cars was 476,693 miles, and the conversion cars were 179,693 miles. And lastly, the subway action plan remains a top priority for subways, and we're on track to meet all of our goals for 2018.
Yes, good morning, committee members. My full report can be found on page 54 for the fixed route system. Just like to report that the most operational indicators remain very stable and in some cases have slightly improved. This is demonstrated in MDBF for the 12-month rolling average has improved by roughly 2.7%, and weight assessment has improved ever so slightly by 0.5%. But more importantly, last month, President Byford has challenged me and my team to take steps to begin to improve the bus system and arrest the steady decline in ridership. We accept that challenge, and we envision that challenge to be very bold, very aggressive, relying on many of the time-honored techniques that we've used in the past, such as SBS, but also working with our partners at DOT and NYPD and your support. We're also looking to take some bold and radical steps to really turn the bus system around. So we look forward to coming back to you sometime in the early spring to share some of those steps. Moving on to paratransit, as we work to make our system more flexible for our customers, more reliable, and more transparent, I'd like to report that the live dashboard that's on the MTA website has been updated today to reflect the latest performance numbers. We continue to engage our stakeholders from a perspective of continuous improvement, take their feedback to make this better as we move forward. Also, since the last time we've met with you and given you a presentation on the paratransit strategy, just a few things I'd like to highlight. Number one, when our customers book a trip on our website, they can now get immediate confirmation. This is powerful. We believe that this is going to improve the experience for our customers and entice utilization of technology with our customers. Also, our e-hail pilot is showing signs of success because today we have roughly 500 participants enrolled in that program. Also, We continue to engage the paratransit base and customers and stakeholders in developing our paratransit app. Once again, this is a very engaged process. We're really, really listening to them so that the product is reflective of what their needs are. And as President Byford has asked us to step up our game and focus on the customer. So this is a step in that direction. Also, I'd like to report that we've been working very closely with Commissioner Vanderpool and President Pat Foy in our paratransit task force, so some really good outcomes there. We're also happy to report that we're in the final stages of the RFP process in procuring a new scheduling and AVL dispatch system, something that's going to enable us to improve customer trip time and the overall experience of our paratransit customers. And that completes my report.
That did not provoke lengthy questions. Must mean that you have answered all of them. Thank you.
We should become a model to other committees, Mr. Chairman.
I've often thought that, Mr. Weisbrod.
Absolutely.
Next on deck is the retiring Cheryl Kennedy, and once again, we wish you well.
Thank you, everyone, for the kind words. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. The safety report can be found on page 72 in your book. As you can see in the report, we've had a significant drop in our employee lost time accidents if you compare 2017 with 2016. And one of the key areas that have decreased are overexertion accidents. We believe that that is a result of introducing mechanical equipment to assist us with manual tasks. And one example is the track rail transposer, which is used to remove and replace continuous welded rail. And you can see a picture of that on page 71 in your book. We've also developed short instructional videos for job tasks that have resulted in overexertion accidents. And these videos feature our employees, so they are well received by our workforce. Moving to fires, since the subway action plan began in July, the right-of-way fires have decreased, and a comprehensive cleaning between stations and the use of mobile vacuums from the station platforms have really helped in this effort. Bus collision and collision injuries have also decreased. Stepped up use of field observation rides and seasonal training videos have helped in this effort. Finally, I'd like to point out that we've added friction pad installation program to your list of leading indicators that we're going to track this year. The program, the friction pads increase the resiliency of the rail, so we expect less rail defects such as broken rails. So that completes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Albert.
The derailments are a similar number to last year. Have we figured out what the cause is? Is it a common car type? Is it a common track failure? Or is it a variety?
They were basically no real trend between them. We had gone over some of them during the safety committee. They ranged from operational type issues to track type issues to storage type issues, so there wasn't one real trend.
Okay, thanks.
If there's no one else, thank you and farewell. Next is Chief Coogan and the crime report. Okay.
Good morning. I'm happy to report that year-to-date transit crime is down 9%, with 19 fewer total major felonies than during January of last year. There were 7 additional robberies with 42 versus the 35 that occurred during the same period last year. There were 14 fewer grand larcenies and 12 fewer felony assaults, decreases of 10% and 31% respectively. During January, 38% of the total major felonies were committed in Manhattan, 26% in Brooklyn, 19% in the Bronx, and 17% in Queens. I want to be clear that enforcement of depth of services remains a critical part of our approach to keeping the subways safe and orderly. Theft of services sometimes goes hand in hand with other transit crime, and when left unchecked, promotes an environment of disorder. Access to the subways must remain controlled, and we know too well that people who enter the system to prey on passengers are less likely to pay their fare, and likewise, people who flee into the subways after committing crimes outside the system are equally likely to avoid paying the fare. Our officers recovered 3 illegal firearms this year, each the result of stopping a fare evader. 2 of these encounters resulted in arrests for theft of services and criminal possession of a weapon. During the 3rd incident just last week, the armed individual fought with officers and fled, but not before they were able to recover the illegal gun. That case is now in the hands of our detectives who are actively working to apprehend the man. While nearly 3/4 of fare evaders ultimately receive a non-criminal summons and are immediate release, I caution that individuals with a history of committing crimes in our subways who have warrants or who are in possession of illegal items will continue to be subject to arrest. With that, I thank you again, and I welcome any questions or suggestions you may have.
I'm sorry. Mr. Merdler.
Chief Coogan, I will repeat what you've heard many times before, the constant increase in hate crimes.
Yes.
Take a look at page 81 and the transit districts 30 and 32. 32 is a recidivist at each and every meeting, with increases this time in hate crimes against blacks. By the way, if you look at the book, you see a bunch of asterisks there. Looks like it's expletive deleted for having that increase there. In Semitic crimes and in sexual orientation. You find it in 32 as well. Don't you have cameras to catch these people?
We do have there are cameras in the subway system. We can request to have temporary ones put up. Myself and Bobby Deal, 2 seats to my left, we met and we got a list of the stations with multiple incidents. We checked to see which have cameras. Some do have cameras. Some record, some don't. There's different camera systems. So we did take a look at that. Moving forward, we're looking to see where any multiple incidents occur. As you're right, District 30 did have 12 last year. 6 anti-Semitic, 4 sexual orientation, 1 anti-black, 1 anti-white. They were at different stations. 2 were at Borough Hall. They were both on trains, 1 anti-black, 1 anti-white. There were arrests made in both. DeKalb and Flatbush, there were 2 incidents, 1 sexual orientation where an arrest was made, which occurred on a train, and 1 anti-Semitic, where SWAT stickers were drawn on a moving train. There was also 2 at Metro Tech, both on a train. 1 KKK was written and 1 anti-Semitic, again, SWAT stickers. And then other ones, District 32, there was 3 incidents, all SWAT stickers drawn in the same thing. It was a bathroom. Obviously, you can't put a camera up in the bathroom. Those are all in the beginning of the year, and then they ceased to happen there. There was also 2 at Rector Street in District 2. 1 was sexual orientation, 1 was a SWAT sticker on the platform. This year, we have 2 versus 7 hate crime incidents. 1 in District 33 at Utica and Fulton on a staircase, and 1 at McDonald and Avenue X on the platform. Both of those are anti-Semitic with SWAT stickers. But we are looking, if we see incidents happen multiple times, we are going to put cameras, request to have cameras put up. And we, like I said, I met with Bobby Deal, and we looked at the cameras that are currently up.
So that you do have a plan going forward in terms of trying to address these kind of hate crime incidents.
Yes.
And you do have a program under which you do arrest people where you catch them doing it, right?
Yes, there's a hate, in the detective bureau, there's a hate crimes squad.
Now, do you have any information as to whether those crimes are being actively prosecuted?
Yeah, if they're arrested, they are prosecuted, yes.
Well, depends. In New York County, you wonder about that at times. But it seems to me that at some point we ought to get a handle on A, how many arrests, and B, what happens to them afterwards.
Yes.
Because this situation, each and every meeting, it goes up and up and up.
Well, last year, I mean, it did level off. It was an increase, 54 versus 40, but the big increase was in the beginning of the year, then it did level off, you know. This year, like I said, we did start off slower than last year, 2 versus 7 for the month of January.
All I'm asking of you is that you continue your focus on trying to put in place a plan to catch these folks, or at least arrest them.
Yes. And then I tell you also last year, when if we do make an arrest, we can get that information to you on the person arrested.
I know.
Or also any help that you, with the district attorney's office.
Anyone else? Thank you, Chief. Now, New York City Transit and Staten Island Rail Finance Report, Jaibala Patel.
Good afternoon. My full report begins on page 88 of the book. Some key highlights are the fare box revenue was $4.48 billion, or 1.3 above the final estimate. On the operating expense side, we were below budget estimate by $35.1 million, primarily due to the professional services contract timing. On the ridership side, we totaled 2.34 billion ridership numbers, and that was below 1% by our estimate.
All right. Any questions or comments? Mr. Merdler.
You have an increase pretty much across the board on claims. Can you tell me why there is this significant increase? Or what is being done about it?
So I will have to look into that for you, and then I can get back to you.
Okay, thank you. For bus finance, back to Mr. Irick.
Yes, quickly. Preliminary 2017 MTA fare box revenue was $215 million, which was 2% below the estimate. Preliminary 2017 MTA operating expenses exceeded the estimate by 5%. Preliminary ridership, annual bus company ridership of 122 million was 6% below the estimate, and that completes the report.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Irick. Mr. O'Grady will give us the capital program report.
So in your books, starting on page 144 of the capital program report, I'm going to give a few highlights. We awarded 12 projects in December 2017, totaling $313 million. The ADA projects, 2 ADA projects are exemplified here is 86th Street Station and 4th Avenue in Brooklyn. So after those two they have been awarded, we have 10 more ADA key station projects to award in the balance of 2018. With regards to substantial completions, we wrapped up $507.9 million worth of work. I just would like to highlight the Joralemon Tube, the 6th Under-River Tube that was finished post-Sandy, where we've incorporated repair and resiliency measures. That concludes the capital program report.
Progress on the Dyer Avenue line signal modernization. That was truly worthy. The old signal is truly worthy of inclusion in the Smithsonian. Next is Mr. Holmes.
Yes, good afternoon, and
Service
thank
changes,
you.
and that concludes the customer service report.
Good afternoon, everyone. This month, MTA Bus has one service change for information purposes, the details of which can be found on page 157 of your book. In order to better serve the Boulevard Corporate Center, which is a large corporate building in North Jackson Heights in Queens, we are recommending diverting the Q47 into the center northbound between 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. and southbound from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. These hours selected are selected to best serve workers and visitors of the Boulevard Center, while not changing any stops along the route. There's one added stop within the corporate center property itself. Of the 8,000 or so average weekday customers, a total of 350 will be impacted with a slightly longer ride of 4 to 5 minutes. The cost will be, the resulted increase of cost will be $58,000 of annual operating cost, and that concludes the service change section of the agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Albert has a question.
Mr. Holmes, so is there, besides a verbal agreement, anything in writing that guarantees that the operators of the Bulova Center will keep the bus flow moving and not obstructed in any way?
Well, we had an agreement, a license agreement. I can have Robert Lai probably answer that a little better.
Sure.
Yes, Andrew, we do have a license agreement signed by both sides.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Then I'll ask Mr. Plachaki to give us procurements.
Good afternoon. The procurement package, which presents New York City Transit and MTA bus procurements, includes 5 actions totaling $134.2 million in expenditures. I'd like to highlight 2 procurement actions included in this month's agenda. The first procurement action is the award of a competitively negotiated Sandy resiliency contract for the upgrade of the Emergency Booth Communications System, or EBCS, to Boyce Technologies Incorporated in the amount of $49.3 million in a duration of 32 months. This action includes 3 5-year options for maintenance and training support services for an additional $20.6 million. The option pricing is not included in this recommendation, as separate board approval and funding will be sought prior to the exercise of any of the options. The EBCS is an emergency safety notification system used for communications between station agents and the Rail Control Center during emergency and safety-related incidents. The current EBCS is an analog system that is near the end of its useful life and needs to be replaced to meet the needs of New York City Transit and its users. This contract will replace and modernize the EBCS by upgrading from the use of an analog call transmission technology to a digital technology, which will improve the quality of voice communications and mass call announcements to the station agents. The contract also includes the integration of the upgraded EBCS into a unified platform along with other communication systems such as the Help Point and Customer Assistance Intercom. In addition to providing better response times for customers and station agents, this integration will provide faster, more reliable communication, higher data storage, and better management of the emergency communication systems, including consolidating steps in the emergency call logging and reporting, as well as allow for simpler and automatic diagnostics, testing, and maintenance. In order to cultivate competition for this procurement, an extensive outreach was conducted to the contracting community, followed by a request for information. A competitive RFP was utilized for this procurement, and 2 proposals were received, one from Boyce and another from Parsons Transportation Group of New York, Incorporated. Both Boyce and Parsons proposals were evaluated by the selection committee in accordance with the pre-established evaluation criteria. Both proposals were selected to participate in negotiations, and at the conclusion of negotiations, both proposals submitted best and final offers. After reviewing best and final offers in accordance with the evaluation criteria, the selection committee recommended Boyce for award. The selection committee determined that Boyce's superior technical proposal, lowest price, offered the best overall value to New York City Transit. Boyce's proposal was unanimously ranked the highest based on its understanding of the work, as well as familiarity with the current system and having the best proposed solution. Boyce's best and final offer of $69.9 million is approximately $12.7 million, or 15.4% lower than its initial proposal, and is within 6.3 of the revised internal estimate. Boyce's best and final offer is approximately $1.7 million, or 2.5% below Parsons' best and final offer of $71.6 million. Boyce's proposed price has been found fair and reasonable. The second action I'd like to highlight is the award of a competitively negotiated federally funded contract to C2K partners for $62.6 million and a duration of 103 months to provide consulting services for post-award support for the R211 subway contract, which was recently approved by the January 2018 board. This contract includes 2 options for an additional $26.4 million and 23 additional months that coincide with the options of the R211 subway car contract. The option pricing is not included in this recommendation, as separate board approval and funding will be sought prior to exercise of any options. C2K is a joint venture between CH2M Incorporated and LTK Engineering Services Incorporated. The consulting services covered under this contract include project management, quality management, industrial design, car mock-up, and on-site engineering reviews, various inspection services, including first article, pre-shipment, and on-site inspections, as well as testing services. In addition, C2K will also provide Buy American U.S. employment plan audits. Procurement performed an extensive outreach in an effort to generate interest in this contract, and the request proposal was publicly advertised, and notification was sent out to over 70 firms. 8 firms picked up the RFP package. Proposals were received from 2 firms, C2K and Sistra USA. Among the 6 other firms that picked up the RFP package, some joined the C2K and Sistra teams and as subconsultants, and the balance opted not to propose. The selection committee evaluated both the proposals in accordance with the established criteria, and following oral presentations, both proposals were selected for negotiations and ultimately submitted best and final offers. After review of the best and final offers in accordance with the criteria, the selection committee unanimously recommended C2K for award of this contract. This recommendation was based on the selection committee's determination that C2K's proposal was technically superior based on its extensive rail experience, strength of the project team, and a comprehensive understanding of the scope of work. As a result, the selection committee unanimously recommended the award as we consider it to be best value. C2K's total negotiated price of $88.98 million for the base and both options of $5.9 million, about 6.3% less than the total contract estimate of $94.9 million. I request for your approval of all items in the agenda.
Second. Is there any discussion on any of this? Mr. Albert and
Thank
then
you.
Mr. Merdler.
Do we do a consulting contract such as the C2K after every large-scale car purchase?
We do it in order to support every car contract, that's correct, and we have for many years.
So is that considered part of the costs, for instance, of the R211s?
In the overall project, yes, it is.
Thanks.
Mr. Plukchucky, I have 3 questions on the boys' contract. Number 1, is there any proprietary equipment? Is there any proprietary equipment or component in the proposed boys' plan?
Our request was that the company provide as much off-the-shelf available material as software as possible. There is a small portion of it that is, but we have rights to that.
You'd have rights to acquire it or to use it anyway?
Use it at any time, particularly if the company were to go out of business. But in this particular contract, we competitively solicited software support for the useful life of the product. But in the event, or the unlikely event, that the company were to go out of business, we would have full rights to that and be able to use it.
What would happen if there were a better piece of technology that came down the road? Would you have the right to substitute that better piece of technology under the contract?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the contract was set up, and I'll say for sort of a plug-and-play technology, the extent to which additional componentry becomes available, we'll be able to interface with this, with the backbone of this.
Secondly, I notice it's a 5-year maintenance contract with 2 options. Is it your view that you need to have that long a period of contracting?
Yes, it's got the piece of equipment has got a 15-year useful life after its implementation. So what we've done over the years, and I've discussed this before as a strategy, rather than be left going back on bent knee, if you will, to a contractor after we've awarded and asking them to support it, we solicit that and make it part of the contract with options, the extent to which we decide that either A, we want to try and maintain it in-house, and in many instances we are the first responders to this, but if we get into a position where we really need the original equipment manufacturer to support us, they come in. But yeah, there's 3 5-year clips.
The last part of that, if I may. You have a total number for boys of about, 69 or 65 million. Does that include any potential for extras or for the disposition of extras?
And no, we haven't included that. I mean, we don't expect there to be extras on this particular contract. The way it was negotiated, we sent out a specification. This is more of a performance specification for them, so we expect them to do the project within that number.
Thank you.
Procurement package has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Procurement package is passed. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask President Byford to present standard follow-up reports.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got a number of routine follow-ups in the pack this month. These are consistent with what you required from us by way of the work plan. So in the pack, you've got the MetroCard report. There's the 2018 adopted budget and financial plan for 2018-21 for transit, SAR, and MTA bus. The annual report on ADA compliance, the semi-annual report on service quality indicators for transit and MTA bus, and the fourth quarter 2017 report on the Transit Adjudication Bureau. So all of those are in the pack, Mr. Chairman, and when we just covered a couple of other items, board members may have questions on them. But for now, I'd like to hand over to my VP, EEO and Diversity, Joel Andrews, who will be followed by Daryl Irick for NYC Transit and MTA bus for a diversity report in his respective area. But Joel, firstly for you, for NYC Transit, please.
Good afternoon. The New York City Transit's entire end of year 2017 EEO report can be found in the committee materials beginning on page 179. I will summarize for the committee only data on the workforce, composition, new hires, and complaints of discrimination. Based on human resources and EEO data, there were 51,980 employees at New York City Transit at the end of December 2017. 40,223, approximately 77% of the entire workforce, were men and women of color. 9,632 of the employees were women, or approximately 19% of the entire workforce, and 618, or approximately 1%, were veterans. With respect to new hires, the New York City Transit hired 5,302 employees during calendar year 2017. 4,419, or approximately 83% of the new hires, were men and women of color. 1,344, or 25%, were women, and 123, or 2%, were veterans. With respect to complaints of discrimination, New York City Transit handled 633 complaints of discrimination as compared to 600 such complaints during calendar year 2016. And that completes my summary of the EEO data.
Any questions or comments on that? Hearing none, I have one. I appreciate your report. Do you have any texture you can add on diversity and inclusion in the supervisory and administrative ranks of NYCT?
With respect to supervisory rank, we tend to be extremely diverse in terms of race and gender. Approximately 2/3 of the supervisors are men and women of color. What we have had to focus on, both in terms of the supervisory and managerial ranks, is improving the representation of women. That continues to be a challenge for the agency, and we'll be talking at the Diversity Committee about our ongoing strategies to improve the representation of women.
Mr. Jones.
Perhaps for the next report, I'd be very interested in the supervisory ranks as well, not only in terms of just purely who's a supervisor and who's not, but the most senior supervisors in the system, just as part of the regular report, as your workforce report. I'd be very interested in that, obviously. It might be interesting to look at it also in terms of salary levels, again, going forward.
We'd be happy to provide that information, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much, Mr. Andrews.
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry? Oh, Ms. Vanderpool.
With apologies for my misunderstanding, might we revisit the procurement package? I have a question.
Sure. What did you want to do in revisiting it? Do you want to ask a question?
Well, I thought I misunderstood that the procurement package would just be the 3 procurements, and then we would discuss the ratifications separately. I didn't realize they would all be rolled into the procurement package. The ratifications that we have before us on the new flyer buses.
Okay.
What was
Can
the
we-
question, Ms. Vanterpool?
So I have a question on the first of the two new flyers. The first would be for the 138 low-floor buses. And the ratification is asking us to modify or ratify the modifications to that contract for $1.7 million. What was the nature of those technical changes that were being asked?
Well, predominantly the changes covered branding of the buses. That's the painting. That's the new paint scheme and all. Also included the incorporation installation of USB charging points as well as Wi-Fi. That drove most of the dollar value. But there were other, I'll say, mechanical and electrical changes that were made for certain efficiencies within the actual product. And there's a laundry list, probably about like 30 of them.
So I would like to register my objection to those two ratifications and just have it noted that I actually do not want to support either of those two ratifications. And my reason for not doing so is because I think this is an egregious example of how different priorities are pushed into our procurement packages at times that don't necessarily have the greatest impact on service. So for example, $3.3 million up to, right? Not every single dollar is going toward the rebranding, but up to $3.3 million is going toward rebranding these buses. And for 75 of them, that was done after these buses had already left the production line. So I just think moving forward, these are exactly the sorts of modifications that we as a board should be paying very close attention to, because that $3.3 million could have gone elsewhere. But that decision wasn't necessarily made by a lot of people. So I'd just like to register my disagreement with that and note that while I don't agree with $3.3 million going toward wrapping buses yellow and gold and adding Wi-Fi and USB ports, particularly when 75 of these buses were already off the production line. I think there could have been a case to be made where these 75 are off. Let's just move with the 138 and save the $1.6 million. Thank you.
Your objection will be noted in the record. Now I think we're back to Mr. Irick and the MTA bus EEO and Diversity and Inclusion report.
Right, so the report can be found on page 195, current state of affairs. There are 4,128 employees overall in the MTA bus workforce, of which 3,175 or 77% were men and women of color, 527 or 13% were women, and 42 or 1% were veterans. For calendar year 2017, MTA Bus hired 627 employees, of which 553 or 88% were men and women of color, 123 or 20% were women, and 16 or 3% were veterans. And 124 EEO and Title VI complaints were handled during the year of 2017. That completes the report.
I had the same question, Mr. Irick, about supervisory and administrative ranks.
Right, so we're doing a lot there, but I'll take the opportunity to come back with Joe and give you an update on those details and specifics.
Fair enough,
Okay.
thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Same question.
Ms. Vanterpool.
What is an external complaint? Is that a complaint against a vendor?
I'll answer for both New York City Transit and MTA Bus Company. We characterize an external complaint as a complaint filed by an employee with an agency outside of the MTA. So a complaint filed with the New York State Division of Human Rights, for instance, which is typically handled by, at Transit at least, the law department. I believe it's the same for MTA Bus Company. Those are considered external complaints.
Is there anyone else? Thank you. Back to Mr. Jazicki for the elevator and escalator report.
Thank you. The elevator and escalator performance remained stable in the fourth quarter of 2017. Elevator availability is at 96.3% and escalator availability at 94.6%. Our recruitment of qualified staffing continues, and we continue to focus our efforts on those poor-performing assets.
I might just add to that, Mr. Chairman, if I may. It's similar, in a similar vein to where I've asked Darrell to pull together a strategy on bus. I've asked Frank with his team to look at elevator and escalator availability and reliability, because that again is back to basics for me. That obviously we want more elevators, consistent with my earlier comments, but we should be getting better at making the existing fleet work better and understanding again root cause of what causes them to come out of service. Is it the prevailing age? Is it a poor design? Is it vandalism? Is it weather-related? Which machines are the worst performers? Let's go at them on a pro-rata basis. Which ones are causing the most entrapment? So we're really drilling down into the data again, and we're not letting the private elevator, escalator owners off the hook. I want to see what those people are doing as per their contracts to make sure that they keep those devices in use. So we'll keep you posted on all of that. That's another angle of attack on basics that we've got underway. Thank you.
With regards to the elevator, escalator accessibility, and we've discussed this in previous meetings, some of the newer models, 0 and 1 year old, are operating at the same level of performance or accessibility as some of the units that are 28 years old. So if you could just remind us, please, what's being done to resolve that subset of units that falls in that category?
Certainly. So we see an uptick in some of the newer elevators, particularly if you notice in your report, we have a very poor performing set of elevators at 63rd and Lex that were recently installed. We had a series of controller malfunctions and subsequent repairs. In this particular case, they're being addressed by the contractor under the warranty. However, we've noticed an uptick in the machines system-wide. So we have a refocus of our maintenance staff as well as the engineering folks. We've kind of integrated the effort to focus on the poor-performing machines as well as the those machines with high entrapment figures. We've also directed our contractors to supplement our maintenance forces. So we have two maintenance contracts. One is in the Washington Heights area. We've directed the contractor there to perform a thorough analysis of the failures there and target some of the replacement of the components and alike. And we just signed just last week a second maintenance contract that will help supplement our maintenance forces as well. Again, with the same goal, go after those poor performing machines system-wide. So we're hoping to see an uptick in the availability and reliability of machines.
Thank you. We're in the home stretch. Mr. Lieber.
So, actually, to the following up on Frank's response, Commissioner Vanterpool, I actually looked at the performance of the elevators and escalators in the new 2nd Avenue subway, and they're performing sort of borderline to our standard for, as you say, systems of all different ages, which is unsatisfactory for new systems. So I actually have directed the team to engage a consultant to review not just the caliber of the system, but the installation process. If there was anything that went wrong in how they were installed, or that we can learn from going forward, because clearly it's not where you want it to be for a system that's that new. A couple of, in the spirit of this meeting, I'm going to go very, very fast. One, with respect to 2nd Avenue subway, we've completed a year of operations. Weekday ridership is now up to the 190,000 per day level, which would indicate 58 million per year. And there continues to be an indication that we've reduced crowding on the Lexington Avenue line stations in the Upper East Side that were previously used by a lot of folks who are now going to 2nd Avenue by in excess of 40%. So we are continuing to see those benefits. With respect to the only other project that I'm going to talk about very quickly is the Cortlandt Street Station project, which was sent over, I'll remind everybody, to the MTA from the Port Authority only in 2015. It's a source of
frustration to everybody, especially in the world I came from, the World Trade Center rebuilding world, that that's taken so long. It came back from the Port Authority, which originally had been anticipated to do it as part of their rebuilding the World Trade Center site, came back to the MTA in 2015, had to be redesigned, and it was assigned to a contractor. I think, as everybody knows, we weren't satisfied with the contractor's performance, so last summer actually took action against the contractor, and since then have seen a significant improvement in performance, such that we now anticipate we will be able to achieve substantial completion in October, hoping for an opening perhaps in November. The principal risk I would point out to everybody is that the north end of this facility is in an area where the Port Authority is building the structure up to grade, incredibly complicated project, and the Performing Arts Center, which has now raised a good deal of money, is moving forward with their construction on top of it. We have some egress facilities that are threaded in between that, so it's a fairly complicated logistics and sequencing. I'm addressing that with those other agencies, the port and otherwise. But other than that, we are making significant progress on that project, and I think thanks to the board's action, we put it on the right track.
I have one question. I went by there a couple of months ago. There didn't seem to be too much going on, but can we get some kind of detail in the reports other than just what's there, which is nothing?
No, we'll happy to provide you additional detail on exactly what work has been done, and I can speak to you privately.
Not just for me, but for the board.
Of course.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? That concludes our agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor?
Can I just ask one question? I'm sorry. On the PES reports, which are very helpful, this is the first time I guess I've seen them, could we add either here or perhaps somewhere else performance of countdown clocks as a passenger experience, since that they are? I mean, I just think they are such a now central part of the passenger experience. Okay.
Commissioner, yes, we'll take that away and we'll look at how we can present that to you.
All in favor? Aye. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you. As I was saying.